Hello, today we are going to configure Windows 2008 Server R2 uh, to support directory services, to perform Active Directory services, and to be able to create a domain that other client machines will be able to join and operate in a networked environment. So we're going to begin with a fresh install of Windows 2008 Server R2, and we are going to log on as administrator. And we are going to go into our server manager. And we're going to set up the role. So, firstly, we are going to add the role, and we are going to add in Active Directory domain services, and we need to know, we click next and install. So that installation has succeeded, and now what we want to do is we want to set up Active Directory. We want to promote this machine to be a domain controller. Now we can do that by either clicking on this link, which will start the installation wizard, or we can go to run, type in DC promo, and click OK. We're going to create a new domain in a new forest, and we're going to enter a fully qualified domain name, which, for example, in this case will be, let us say, myinitials.com. And it would check to see whether that forest name existed before, and of course it doesn't, because we are on a private network. The functional level, we will leave it at 2003. This is something that you need to be careful of when you're doing an actual installation in a live environment. You need to be aware of what servers existed on the network before. Otherwise, if you, for example, select the option of Windows 2008 or 2008 R2, then older servers will not be able to communicate with this server. So I'm just going to leave it at 2003, even though this is a new install and there are no other servers on this network. So it's prompting me to also install DNS server. We will go ahead and do that. In a later video, we will in fact be configuring a DNS server. This warning will pop up, and that is fine because there was no DNS service on the network before. So we will continue. We will accept the defaults. We'll enter a password here. This password is necessary if we in fact want to restore our directory services configurations, and we can export the settings. In this case I will not, but in a live environment you will be recommended and perhaps even required to do so. And so we await the completion of this installation. And it is completed, so we hit finish, and we will restart the server, which will now become the domain controller for this network. Okay, so now we are about to log in on our new primary domain controller. And if you would notice, the domain KH now shows up as part of the login. And if you look at this initial task on the screen here, you will see that the domain is now kh.com and the computer name khserver.kh.com is the fully qualified name. And if we look at our roles, we will see that Active Directory and DNS server are now set up on this machine. And we can now browse to our Active Directory users and computers. And you'll see the domain here. And these are all the objects within this Active Directory. There are no computers added as yet, and the users are simply the default users. Great, so now we have our domain controller set up. Now we want our domain controller to be able to communicate with other machines in our network. And since we're using the VirtualBox environment, we want to make sure that a few settings are in place. So let me minimize this. So for each of our machines, we want to go into settings, and we want to make sure that our network is set up in a particular way. For the XP machine specifically, we want to make sure that in fact, all of the clients, we're going to be setting up internal network. So the machine will be attached to an internal network. It means that there will be no communication with the outside world. And specifically for Windows XP, the adapter type, we are going to be using PCNet-PCI2, which is an older network card. The newer network cards that are available within VirtualBox, these when they are not compatible with Windows XP, so that you can set up the Windows XP, but it will not communicate with the outside world. So we want to make sure that that adapter card is set up, and we also want to make sure that in promiscuous mode we allow all. For Windows Server, the settings, likewise, we will look at it, make sure it's internal network, and in this case it has its own functional adapter type, and promiscuous mode, again, we allow all. Once again, internal network, and you will see it has the Intel Pro, and we allow all. Windows 7. Finally, again, this is using the Intel Pro. I allow all internal network. So all our clients and our server are in theory able to communicate with each other. So we'll begin with our server. If we open network and sharing, we will change adapter settings and properties, and we will go to TCP version 4, Internet Protocol version 4, and click on properties, and you will notice the way it is set up here. We will have the IP address, as in this case I'm using 192.168.0.10. This will be an internal address, and for the DNS server, since this machine will also be set up as the DNS server, then we want the preferred DNS server to be itself, and this address is called the loopback address, so it points back to itself. So that is fine. If we look at our clients, similarly, we want to be able to look at our network card settings to make sure that we can communicate with all other devices on the network. So we click on properties here, and again we look at our setup, and in this case, remember our server, we had it configured as 192.168.0.10. That machine will now become the default gateway for the network, and it will also become the preferred DNS server. The IP has been configured statically so that we have our IP address accordingly as 0.12. And just to make sure that we can communicate with each other, we want to go to the command prompt, and we will type in ping and the address of the server, and you can see we are able to communicate. Likewise, you will set that up in all of the other client machines. This is Windows XP, and we also have Windows 7. So you can see we can communicate with all of the other machines on the network. Let's just take a quick look at Windows 7. And once again, we look at our properties. We set our IP address, in this case 13, and our default gateway again becomes the address of the server as well as the DNS server. Let's make sure that we can again ping the other machines. First, our domain controller. We want to ping our Vista machine, and we want to ping our XP machine, and we are successful in each case. Now it's important that we are able to do that communication between machines, because because specifically if we want to join these clients to the domain, they need to be able to communicate with specifically with the server, the domain controller, in order to join that domain. And interestingly, also, if we look at the network, we can see each of the machines on the network here: the server, the XP machine, and the two other clients. So finally, we'll take a look at XP. So once again in XP, we see the appropriate settings have been configured. And once again, if we try to communicate with the other machines, we are able to do so along with our server. Great. So now we want to begin by joining the machines to the domain. But we can do this one of two ways. Firstly, we can begin by creating a computer account within Active Directory. And if we go to computers, if we right click, we can set up a new computer here. And let's say I wanted to add the Windows XP machine. I would simply give it the name. Now this name is going to be exactly as I have it configured on the XP client. So we want to just check that out and make sure that that is in fact the case. So we have ws-xp. So we want to set it up the same way here. So now we can do it that way, and then we can join the machine to the domain. So in XP, we go to the system properties, and we can click on this button, rename this computer or join a domain, click change, and we want to click on domain, and we are going to type in KH, click OK, and you'll see immediately we prompted for a username and password. So the username in this case will be the administrator account, and we click OK, and here we are. We have joined the domain, and we restart. When this machine reboots, we will be able to log in to the domain. So here we click on options, and now we're no longer going to be logging in directly to this computer. Instead, we are going to log into this domain KH, and for the time being we're going to log in with the administrator's credentials. And you'll notice a new profile has been created. So now if you right click on my computer and click on properties, you will notice that this computer now belongs to the kh.com domain, and the full name for this computer is now ws-xp.kh.com, because we belong to the domain. So our XP machine has successfully joined our domain. The other, perhaps easier way to join the domain, we'll try this with the Vista machine, and here we'll go without necessarily creating the step of creating a computer account. We simply go computer, properties, and if we scroll, we will just, where you see computer name here, we will change settings, accept it, and now we meet a familiar system properties window. So we hit change, and once again we are going to join this machine to the domain, and we're going to type in KH, and once again we are prompted. We provide the administrator credentials and click OK. And if we are successful, we should get a confirmation in just a second. And here we go. We have in fact joined the domain. So we close, restart now. While our client machine, okay, here we have it. So now we're going to click on switch user, other user. So in fact we now log on to KH, and so I'll type in the administrator credentials, notice the way I did it here. I put the domain name KH, then slash, and then the administrator name, there we go. If you notice now, we are logged in as administrator. So if we go again to computer properties, we will notice here that we are in fact joined to the domain. But remember, we did not create a machine account. So let's go back to our server and let's hit refresh. And wouldn't you know it, a computer account has in fact been created for us. So in fact, when we join a domain, when we join a computer to a domain, it usually will create a computer account. So we could have chosen to either create that computer account manually, or we in this case have it automatically created for us as part of joining the domain procedure. So once again, we're going to do this with our Windows 7 client. So again, we click on Start, right click on Computer, and we click on Properties. And this one will be very similar to Windows Vista. So we click on Change Settings, and here on our System Properties window, we click on Change, and again we are going to Domain, and our domain name will be KH. We are prompted, so we'll enter our administrator credentials. And here we go. We have our welcome to the KH domain. Click OK, close, and restart now. And once again, meanwhile, we go to our server manager and we hit refresh, and here we go. We now have our Windows 7 computer also created. So we will just wait for our Windows 7 computer to reboot. So we're going to switch user, other user, and here we can either type in the KH/, or if you noticed something that I did not notice on the Vista machine before, but in fact it prompts you automatically to log on to KH. And now that we finally got our credentials right, and here we are. We have successfully logged in to our new domain. You will notice the username is administrator, and if we go to computer properties, you realize that we are now a part of the domain. So we have successfully joined 3 different clients, Windows XP, Windows Vista, and Windows 7, to our Windows 2008 R2 Active Directory structure, or our domain. Thank you very much for viewing.